One major departure that Borderlands 2 had from the original Borderlands was the introduction of Badass rank. Unlike the original game, where the player could acquire various levels of proficiency with certain weapon types, Borderlands 2 opted to roll some of the stat boosts provided by weapon proficiencies into a sort of achievement or challenge-based system. So instead of gaining experience using a particular weapon type like you would in Borderlands 1, the player could complete a variety of challenges that would then boost their stats overall. On the one hand, this was actually quite nice because the stat boosts weren't limited to just one particular weapon class and could extend to a variety of other stats as well. At the same time, this implementation was admittedly frustrating, not only because of the low amount of bonus received per badass rank token, but also due to the fact that once points were initially allocated, the player couldn't respec to achieve more of the desirable bonuses they wanted and less of the ones that they didn't want. In today's video, I want to talk about why badass rank was both a pretty great and pretty flawed system in Borderlands 2, and how things could be improved for Borderlands 3. But I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about some of the positives of badass rank first. In my mind, the major advantage that badass rank has over something like weapon proficiencies is that the bonuses provided by badass rank can be applied to any character. So whatever gains you made on your first character were transferable to the other ones that you started. Where in Borderlands 1, any proficiencies that you had obtained would have to be re-obtained by using a specific weapon type on your new character. For this reason, badass rank is far more convenient than weapon proficiencies or something similar to weapon proficiencies. It's also nice that the boosts provided by badass rank are more general when compared to the boosts provided from weapon proficiencies. Obviously, a boost to gun damage is more useful than a boost to just assault rifle damage, and the ability to boost other attributes like maximum health, melee damage, or shield capacity are simply not possible with weapon proficiencies. Ultimately, I think that badass rank is a good thing. Having attributes that can transfer between all of your characters and having boosts to more general, more encompassing attributes is better than boosts to far more specific ones. With this said though, I do think that badass rank is mired by several problems. To start, the transition from gaining experience or proficiency with a specific skill to completing challenges to obtain that exact same skill has its upsides and its downsides. On the one hand, you don't necessarily have to mercilessly grind the exact same thing over and over again in order to improve a specific attribute. With badass rank, if you want to simply increase your gun damage, you can do anything from killing up to 300 Varkids to looting up to 200 green rarity items, or you can also perform specific weapon-related challenges as well. However, I'd argue that a potential downside to this is the fact that some of the challenges that the player has to complete in Borderlands 2 are just obnoxious. While certain things like killing 2,000 enemies with assault rifles is pretty benign, other things like killing 3,200 enemies with assault rifles while being crouched, or killing 300 enemies from long range with a shotgun is immensely frustrating. Other annoying challenges involve things like achieving a second wind with a damage over time effect for each element, shooting bullymong projectiles out of the air, killing unaware enemies with sniper rifles, or killing enemies while riding passenger in a vehicle. Each of the challenges I'm referring to require the player to deliberately try and create situations so they can farm badass tokens instead of just playing the game normally. And if you ask me, badass rank and completing challenges should consist of playing the game normally as opposed to performing trivial tasks. Another major issue with badass rank is the abysmal amount of bonus that you can acquire per token. While your first token may grant you something like 1% bonus to a particular attribute, by the 20th time, you may be receiving a boost that's less than half of that. This means you could redeem something like 20 tokens into a particular attribute, and you might not even achieve a measly 10% bonus. This is made even worse by the fact that you're only allowed to choose from 5 of the 14 attributes that you can boost, every time you try to go ahead and redeem a badass token. So by the time you redeem 20 badass tokens by completing 20 levels of challenges, you're going to have bonuses spread out over so many areas that none of them are really even worthwhile. So you can't even properly allocate your badass rank in a way that maximizes your offensive or defensive potential across all of your characters. The big thing though is that badass rank progression feels abysmally slow. The bonuses you receive not only greatly diminish over time, but because you don't really have the ability to properly choose what tokens are boosting what stats, you don't necessarily have the ability to obtain any meaningful boosts from badass rank. And it may take you well over 40 hours of playtime just to obtain a 10% boost into one particular stat, and it could quite possibly take you 400 hours to obtain a 20% boost in the exact same stat. The thing is, a 10% boost is really nothing in this game, and that kind of boost can usually be obtained by gaining 1 or 2 levels and investing 2 skill points into a particular skill. While a 20% boost is decent, it's something that's only really going to be obtained by the enthusiast fanbase that's willing to play 400 hours or more. Even if you are an enthusiast, you kind of have to ask yourself if it's really worthwhile to spend 400 hours playing just to receive a 20% bonus, or just ignore badass rank altogether and take the time to pick up a couple of skills or the proper class mods to receive either an equivalent or totally superior bonus in the exact same area. Something else that's worth discussing when it comes to badass rank is the fact that boosts to certain attributes are far more valuable than others. For example, boosts to gun damage or critical hit damage are far more valuable than things like elemental effect damage, gun accuracy, or shield recharge rate. However, when you first start playing the game, you don't necessarily know this, and because of your own ignorance, you end up choosing one of these attributes while redeeming a badass token. Unlike the player character's skill tree, it's not possible to reset your badass rank. So even if you finally learn that boosts to elemental effect damage are pretty much pointless, there's no way to go back and place those points into something that would be more useful. So you're effectively stuck with bad buffs unless you modify your game, and most people aren't going to do that. Speaking of modding, another thing that we need to discuss is the quote-unquote infinite nature of badass rank. While it's nice that the player could acquire virtually infinite boosts to a variety of stats provided they are willing to simply take the time to complete challenges over and over again, the badass rank system was definitely exploited by people using badass rank editors. While Borderlands the pre-sequel attempted to combat this by showing the player's badass rank upon joining a game, Borderlands 2 didn't possess any kind of feature to inform the player. So you could have someone with modded badass rank join your game, and all of a sudden, they're one-shotting everything in sight, regardless of equipment. While some of the modders out there are to blame for this, to some degree, I also have to point the finger at Gearbox too. By not introducing some kind of cap for badass rank bonuses, Gearbox ultimately created a situation where some players that had modded badass rank could join games and potentially upset people. Now, to be clear, I am by no means against modding Borderlands, but I think this was one situation where things kinda got out of hand. At least with black-rated weapons, you could make an argument that there was an element of creativity in creating those weapons. However, with modded badass rank, it was just a stat boost that gave you a massive advantage over everyone else. But I digress. What I'm getting at is that while it was nice that badass rank was infinite, there were some negative side effects of badass rank being infinite that really should be fixed. Now at this point, you're probably wondering, how should badass rank be handled going forward in Borderlands 3, or how could things simply be improved? While it's ultimately Gearbox's decision on the matter, here are a couple of things that I would suggest doing. First and foremost, bonuses granted by badass rank must have a cap. By having a specific cap to certain attributes, you might be able to eliminate the ability for some players to edit their badass rank to ridiculous levels. And even if they did edit their badass rank, they couldn't exceed a value that could be reasonably achieved by other players. While having a cap on badass rank may sound bad at first, as much as a 100% boost to any attribute effectively doubles the player's effectiveness in that area. So 100% gun damage will double your gun damage, 100% maximum health will double your health, and 100% shield capacity will double your shield capacity. In fact, I think the first cap on badass rank bonuses could start at 100% and gradually increase over time as new updates are added to the game. Perhaps after all of the updates for Borderlands 3 are out, the player could increase all attributes by 200%, effectively making them up to 3 times more powerful than normal. Something else that would improve badass rank would be to increase the rate of progression when it comes to bonuses. As I mentioned earlier, by having diminishing returns so early, the player never really sees a noticeable improvement in their character's damage until they get at least a 10% boost, which can take well over 40 hours of playtime. To encourage the player to play longer and attempt to complete challenges, the bonuses provided by badass rank need to be much more noticeable. Perhaps you might start off with a 5% boost to a particular stat, only to have a 15 to 20% boost after 10 hours of play. Then, once you've reached maximum level on a character and completed Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, maybe you have 1 or 2 stats with 100% boosts. That way, on your subsequent playthroughs, you can finally reach 100% on all attributes that are boosted by badass rank. The big thing here is to make badass rank progression feel more noticeable and significant, because if it is and players start to see themselves becoming noticeably more powerful, then I think they will be motivated to play more. And if it really does become too much of a problem where bonuses from badass rank are too high, perhaps Gearbox could design later difficulties with a higher badass rank in mind. Another thing that would make badass rank better would be if specific challenges correlated to specific boosts. For example, with Borderlands 1's weapon proficiencies, the player could use shotguns to get better with shotguns, and I think something similar could be done with badass rank going forward. As an example, maybe if you wanted to improve your critical hit damage, you would do so by performing critical hits, or you could improve your shield capacity by learning how to take damage without your shield depleting entirely. Ultimately, badass rank should work more like weapon proficiencies did from Borderlands 1, where you actually end up becoming stronger by performing a specific task rather than performing random tasks which might improve the stats that you want to improve. With all of this said though, if Gearbox decided to change nothing about badass rank, I think it would at least be a good idea to allow players to reset their badass rank. Not only would this be good because it allows players to go back and correct their mistakes, but it would also be good for when Gearbox introduces new, significant balance changes. For example, when Gearbox introduced Ultimate Vault Hunter mode for Borderlands 2, elemental effect damage became useless, and if you had a significant amount of points invested into that area for your badass rank, they were basically wasted points. By allowing players to respec or reallocate their badass rank, players could adapt better to various balance changes introduced over time. And it would also be nice to be able to go back and correct some of the mistakes you made when you knew less about the game. At the end of the day, regardless of what Gearbox decides to do, I think what we would all really like to see is for badass rank to be better in Borderlands 3. My hope is that Gearbox will take some of the suggestions I've made here and apply them to help make badass rank better. But even if Gearbox doesn't, I think tweaking a few things like allowing the player to reset badass rank and introducing a cap to certain bonuses would make the system better and much more fair. Hopefully, we'll see some awesome changes and improvements to badass rank for Borderlands 3, but otherwise guys, I think that's going to pretty much wrap up this particular video. Let me know what you think about badass rank in the comments section below. Otherwise, like this video if you liked it, and as always, take care, and I'll see y'all next time.